price you pay to pursue your dreams. Grinding every day to get that dream. Ain't no holding back until you get your shot. One day you're gonna open your eyes and be on top. That's the price you pay to pursue your dreams. Grinding every day to get that dream. Ain't no holding back until you get your shot. One day you're gonna open your eyes and be on top. Been playing this game since I was 10 years of age. I wanted to make my mark ever since my Pop Warner days. When I strapped that helmet, I'm knocking dudes into a blaze. A lockdown corner going all the way through 7th and 8th grade. Entering high school, I'm ready to write another page. Busting my ass and lifting weights. It's a much higher level, but I'm still making plays. No time to party or bask in my glory days. It's college preparatory classes every single day. Living my life with that singular goal. It's the fire inside that makes me whole. Looking in the mirror, my muscles swole. I'm on a mission, and I'm never gonna stop. When the ball's in the air like Sherman, I'm a hawk. And I promise I'll overcome whatever life throws at me. All right, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Ageless Movement Podcast. I'm your co-host, Scott Lohman.
I'm Sam Klinger.
All right, what is our topic for today?
Well, if you watched last week, you would know.
Migraines. Yeah, so if you even caught 3 minutes of our podcast last week, you probably noticed how I had sunglasses on. And I must admit, I'm more comfortable in my sunglasses than I am my regular glasses. I like the way they wrap around. I like the way they feel more. I have light sensitivity issues. I do prefer to wear sunglasses. And sometimes I've gotten a lot of flack from people because I'll wear sunglasses indoors if it's very bright. An example of that was we went and saw my buddy's son wrestle about 3 or 4 years ago. And inside the arena, it was super bright. The sun was like penetrating through it like it does the Armory. And plus there were lights in there. So I'm wearing my sunglasses. And one of my best friends is like, what are you doing, man? Take those off. And I'm like, no, I like them on. I feel better. I can see better. I feel better. So we're going to talk about migraines today and probably some information about migraines you didn't know. First thing I want to start off by talking about is please like and subscribe to our channel if you haven't done that thus far. Every time you like, it puts us in the algorithm and opens us up to a wider audience. We like to help people. We like to spread knowledge because while information is more available than it's ever been, misinformation is also more available than it's ever been. So we're trying to straighten it out and give people relevant information that they can apply to their lives. All right, let's go ahead and get started with migraines. I think the first thing we're going to do is cover this article here. This is an excellent article by Self. And what they're talking about is the triggering of migraines. And the interesting thing about this is, for many of you, you may not know this, but many migraines are actually caused by exercise. They're induced by exercise, which I thought was surprising, but it's not really surprising when you think about it because there's a lot of triggers for migraines. And people are still trying to understand, why migraines even happen to people in the first place. Any thoughts?
Yeah, I don't know if it's really exercise. I feel like it's stress.
True.
So
well, exercise in itself is a healthy stress.
Sure, but
yeah.
I think our world is way more stressed than it has ever been.
True.
And I don't know that we even have good coping mechanisms. So I feel like it's not always exercise for a lot of people.
Yeah, true.
And then the second thing is, if you are exercising, you have to ask, are you using good form and what's your posture like? Because that's usually the people I come across is people who have headaches, their posture. I could see why they would have migraines.
Bingo! One of our PTs that teaches, Teresa Najjar, I remember she frequently gets migraines and gets really bad ones that completely kick her ass and she can do nothing but go into a dark room and sit there till it's over. And we're going to uncover a lot of all the content around migraines, the facts around it.
it's very different for everyone. And in her case, it's really bad. I mean, sometimes I wake up with pretty severe headaches myself. But the difference is I can roll my neck out as long as I can get breakfast down, which sometimes is hard because you have to understand something. When you have a lot of neck pain going all the way up the trap to the occipital area, you have the vagus nerve, which becomes affected oftentimes. And when that vagus nerve gets affected, you get dizziness, you get nausea, and things like that. And for me, if I can just get breakfast down and roll my neck, I may get to work about an hour later than I normally do. But in that hour, if I can roll my neck out and get breakfast down, which is so important because I'll take 2 Advil, it'll take the edge off of it. And then I can really start rolling my neck. And as I get those muscles to calm down, that vagus nerve just, isn't as affected.
Which then leads to breathing.
True. I mean, possibly. I mean, I don't know that there's ever nights that I wake up with migraines that it's mostly due to breathing. It could be, but I think in many cases for me, it's when my neck is twisted.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I really take a lot of effort to make sure when I sleep that I don't sleep on my side. I do have a very expensive pillow that I bought that's made in Italy.
It's awesome, though.
It is awesome. But if you buy something from Italy, it's a high quality. So I paid a lot of money for it, but it was worth it. It was actually a massage therapist who recommended I go to this place. It's called Relax the Back in Menlo Park. And there was a salesman there that was really good, and I don't think he's there anymore, and I can't even remember his name. All I could tell you, he's a middle-aged Asian guy, about 5'8", real lean. Yeah. Great guy. I mean, he picked the right pillow for me, because he looked at me at first and he's like, I would look at you, you're a larger guy, I would think you'd need a larger pillow, and then I watch you lay down and I realize you need a very average size to small size pillow. So he got that for me, and it really helped, because there was a period, and you remember this transition for me, where I stopped using a pillow.
Yep.
Because I felt like the pillow was making things worse. Mm-hmm. And to be honest with you, this is really going to make you laugh. I basically slept on the same twin bed from when I was a child all the way through about probably 28 years old. And keep in mind, at one point I was 215 pounds on a twin bed. And I used to sleep like a baby on my stomach with my head turned. And it wasn't until 2005, and the reason why I remember the year, I made that transition from sleeping on my stomach like a baby to turning over on my back and using what I would call one of those, what do they call those pillows? The wedge kind? Anyway, ergonomic pillow, which is similar to what I have now, only not as nice. It goes like that. And it made a big difference. I found I was waking up with about probably about 70% less headaches. And I mean, no joke. There was a period there in my low to mid 30s where I was waking up with a headache probably every other day, maybe every 2 or 3 days. And once I went to sleeping on my back and using a different pillow, a lower pillow, I'd say went to once a week, which was dramatically better than before. Now I get them maybe once a month at the most, or maybe I'll get 2 in 1 week and then I won't get any for 3 months. So doing a lot better there. So let's go over what a migraine really is, and what it means for so many people. Excuse me. So a lot of people think of migraines as like painful, sharp. It's not always the case. Sometimes it's interesting. Sometimes you get migraine headaches like I get, where you literally see a light show. They call it visual disturbances and other annoying symptoms. That's a funny way of putting it. To me, it literally looks like a sparkler show. If you've ever had a sparkler you've used during the 4th of July, you do this, and you can close your eyes and still see the pattern, that's how I would describe a migraine to me. Only it starts with blurred vision, sometimes neck tightness, neck stiffness. Then it will kind of progress to blurry vision. And if you're ever reading your phone, something on your phone, that's usually where I notice it. Computer, phone, or watching TV, things start to get blurry, especially the phone or tablet. Oh my goodness, I know it's coming. And then the blurriness starts to give way to sparklers, and the sparklers actually start in the middle of my vision and start working peripherally. And then it gets to a point where you have this crescendo of sparklers. I mean, like maybe 21 of them all happening at the same time. And then the middle of my vision starts to clear up, although there's still some blurriness of vision. And then it's just on the outside where I notice the sparklers, and then it starts to thin, and then it's gone. And that's usually when I'll experience, when the vision clears up, when I'll experience a headache. Usually it's very minor for me, or just moderate. I can deal with it. I'll go roll my neck a little and maybe eat a meal and take a couple Advil and I'm fine. You know, thankfully for me. But I think in Theresa's case, the PT that teaches in our program, I think what makes it particularly different for her, there may be a lot of other factors, but I think the primary factor was a conversation I had with her maybe about 2 years ago where she said she had a disc issue. And I think what she said was not herniated, but an alignment issue in one of her vertebrae, spondylolisthesis or something. Isn't that where it's listhesis? It's a little bit out of alignment. It pushes out a little. So I don't know. She didn't get into the details. I should have asked her why that happened to her neck. Maybe it was a car accident, or maybe that's just how her neck is. Yeah.
It's structural.
And she gets it a lot because I used to fill in for one of her classes, and I would say twice a month I filled in for her for quite a long time. I mean, it was very prevalent with her and would knock her out.
So when did you first start noticing these
For me?
Yeah.
It's interesting. I could tell you to the day. Okay. I came from my buddy's speed shop in Mountain View. Mm-hmm. I picked up my Corvette and I'm like, okay, I'm going to go get some Cafe Yulong, my favorite Chinese place, organic food and everything. I'm heading over there. I'm feeling good. It's a warm day. Mm-hmm. I get in there and I'm listening. This was 2005. Mm-hmm. And I remember sitting down and hearing a bunch of techies talking to my right and left because it was kind of jammed in with a lot of tables. And all of a sudden, I'm trying to read the menu and I'm like, what the hell's going on here? I can't read anything. It's blurry. Like, what's wrong with my eyes? I'm taking my glasses off. I'm putting them back on, putting my sunglasses on, trying to figure out how to read the menu. And then all of a sudden, of course, when the server comes to ask me what I want, all I can see is a sparkler show. So I've had to verbally tell her what I wanted without pointing to the menu. Mm-hmm. And it cleared up in about 10 minutes, now about 15 minutes. By the time I got my food, which is about 15 minutes, and maybe a third of the way through my eating, it was gone. So I remember having this conversation with my father about this. I'm like, I saw all these light sparklers and everything. He's like, oh, you might have a detached retina. You should go to the doctor. Go see the optometrist, right? I remember him telling me that. And I thought, well, how would I have a detached retina? It's not like I knocked somebody out or, tackled somebody, right? So I went to the doctor and I started thinking, maybe this is a migraine. And then I told myself, stop playing doctor. Just let the doctor figure this out. So I go there. The doctor gave me the whole eye test and everything, tested me out, whatever they do to dilate your pupils, gave me the Terminator X glasses. And then I said, so what's up? What's going on? Why? And he's like, you just had a migraine. I'm like, I kind of thought that. He's like, yeah, you're right. That's all it is. You're fine. There's nothing wrong with your retinas. Your eyes are very healthy. Your brain appears to be healthy. He did some kind of neurological test on me too. He's like, I think you're fine. Just if it happens again, you may want to figure out what triggered it. So that was the day. I can't think of what triggered it that day, but it's interesting. Anything you want to add?
Not yet.
Okay, I figured you rolled a little bit. Okay, so some of the symptoms that, come along with, I should say, precursors to migraines, according to this article, and some of these were surprising to me, like constipation. That's interesting. Food cravings, which tells me maybe morning or night people get them. Mood changes. But a lot of things affect mood changes. Hormonal levels, not just in women, men too. Also, they were talking about neck stiffness, which, of course, that's my symptom. Feeling thirsty and having to urinate more often. I love how they use the word peeing. instead of urinating. That's okay. Also, frequent yawning, but geez, that's like a lot of people. I yawn a lot during the day, not quite enough sleep at night. So, and then of course, you know, you'll get sensory changes that take hold. And then the aura causes the weird visual effects, like seeing flashes of light or zigzags. But sometimes it involves other senses as well. You might even feel pins and needles. See, that's something I didn't expect. That sounds almost nerve-related, right? Hearing noises? Wow, like that's something I never experienced. Although, I could say that at frequent times in my life, on and off, I have experienced what I call white noise, where you just kind of hear a ringing, just randomly, but it never lasts long. You ever experienced that? Yeah, I see. That's a normal thing I think some people experience. Okay, so experts don't know the exact cause of migraines, but they have theories ranging from genetics to misbehaving brain chemicals. I think the brain chemicals is I think it's a lot of things, to be honest. I think it probably is genetic for some people. I think brain chemicals obviously control a lot of things like mood as well. And if you notice, that was one of the precursors were mood issues or mood changes. So that tells me that, you know, it is brain chemistry. And then the other thing that's pretty interesting that they're talking about here is they call this the genetic part of it. And I think alignment plays an issue too. Like in Teresa's case, I'm using her name because she's such a good example of somebody who has an alignment issue and how it can affect everything that goes on. What they're talking about too is, so genetic and environmental factors are a possibility as changes in the interaction between your brain stem and the trigeminal nerve, which sends trigeminal, which sends your brain signals about pain in your face and head. So it could cause it to just overreact, so to speak. And I found this interesting too. Imbalances in brain chemicals also play a role. Serotonin. Now, you might have heard a lot about serotonin. Some people have low serotonin levels and they have difficulty sleeping. Declines so it could precipitously drop during a migraine attack. And this can prompt your trigeminal nerve to release neuropeptides, or just brain molecules that affect your meninges. So that's basically the protective layer of the tissue around your brain and spinal cord, ultimately leading to pain. So specifically now, calcitonin gene-related peptide, CGRP, has been top of mind recently. So in May, the Food and Drug Administration approved the first class of drugs designed to prevent migraines by blocking that CGRP. So evidently, it's that whole serotonin affecting your meninges that could be causing, you know, pain in your head and brain. Okay, anything you want to add to that? So they also talked about, this is interesting too. So there are a lot of triggers, and we talked about this just a moment ago, stress being part of it. And there's a study here as exercise possibly being a trigger. So I don't want you to take this the wrong way, because for a lot of people, they just need an excuse not to exercise. And this is one of them. Oh, I don't want to have a headache. Well, it's actually not quite that simple, but let's go over this quickly. So plenty of people experience exercise as a migraine trigger. In 2013 study published in the Journal of Headache and Pain, that's amazing. They have a whole periodical designed for headaches and pain. 38% of the 103 participants reported having a migraine they believe was caused by exercise. But exercise, and this is where it gets interesting, has also been linked with the power to reduce migraines. So for example, a 2011 study of just 91 people published in Cephalgia. Cephala just means brain or head. Cephalgia, I don't know how to say it. Let's just call it that. Found that people who exercise for 40 minutes 3 times a week experienced a much greater reduction in migraines than people who just did a relaxation program. And almost as much as those who took daily preventative migraine medication like can't even pronunciate that, topiramate. Anyway, it's Topiramate. So it's an anti-seizure drug, actually. So isn't that interesting that they give anti-seizure drugs to prevent migraines? And it's just how they do things in the medical industry, the pharmaceutical industry. They're always trying to find different uses and purposes for drugs because they can make more money out of them, right? Then you don't have to design a whole nother drug again. Okay, so the reason why exercise is a migraine trigger for some people prone to head pain is also unclear. One theory is that exercise-induced migraines might be due to what is essentially pressure going from your chest to your brain via your venous system. This is known as internal jugular vein, which is your carotid vein valve incompetence, IJVVI. And it may primarily occur during a phenomenon called the Valsalva maneuver. So all that basically means is, and I don't want to go too deep into that, but it's a study they did at the University of Washington. So Valsalva maneuver is basically when you hold your breath and exert yourself, which is a common thing people do when they sit on the pot. If you're picking something heavy up off the ground and you're not exhaling properly while doing it, you could experience a Valsalva maneuver, which is essentially you feel lightheaded, kind of dizzy at the end of a set. And sometimes you're going to feel that way anyway when you're picking heavy things up off the ground. But that's essentially what could possibly theoretically trigger a migraine in exercise. Exercise-induced migraine.
But oftentimes when we're teaching class, the question always becomes,
when do I
breathing?
Breathe? Yeah.
Are you breathing?
Yeah.
And people are like, I need to think about that.
I don't know. Or they say, when should I breathe? And that's when I know they're not breathing. If they don't know when to breathe or how to breathe while exercising, okay. Mm-hmm. That's problematic. It's amazing because to me, that's such a primal instinct. Like I know when I'm about to lift something heavy, right? And then I exert as I lift. I would never inhale and push at the same time. Or not breathe at all and try to push something heavy. Like, it's interesting how people fall into these patterns. It's never been proven that the Valsalva maneuver literally causes migraines, but it seems like a really good guess to me, Yeah, like I said, there's no concrete link. Some doctors are still interested in Valsalva maneuver as a trigger for migraines. Exercising, so here's the other thing. So Dr. Tariq from the Mayo Clinic says that he thinks that exercising in hot weather at high elevation can cause, I think any exercise at hot weather can cause migraines or any discomfort in your head. I know when we go to Houston, just literally when it's like June or July and it's like 96 degrees there and high humidity, I get a headache just like walking outside of the car to the hotel because it's so brutally hot. I can't even imagine practicing in that weather. Okay.
Unlike me, who will do Bikram in July.
Yeah, you are insane that way. I mean, you couldn't get me to do that in December or November. Okay, now the next question is, what do you do if you think exercise is triggering your migraines? So obviously you talk to your doctor. There's a lot of things that it could be a precursor of. You could have some kind of head trauma. You could have an abnormal brain bleeding. So this is why, headaches are always important. If you're a person who doesn't, excuse me, if you are a person who doesn't normally get headaches and suddenly you have nonstop headaches, that is a serious, serious thing. You should immediately contact your doctor because I can't tell you how many people have had either cancerous or benign tumors that were triggering headaches. And same thing with seizures. I'm not going to say seizures are something that never happens to people, but if you have more than one seizure, there's a reason why a doctor is going to temporarily suspend your license because that's an issue. There's some kind of brain pattern that's happening and you have to figure out what's causing it. And in my brother's case, my brother had a tumor in his brain, benign, thank God, and it was causing seizures. So tumors, seizures, those are always things you should be aware of if you're getting headaches. You don't normally have a history of headaches. So that's just something to take into consideration here. Now, some of the things you can do to avoid getting headaches is just over-the-counter pain medication, like I mentioned, NSAIDs, like Motrin, ibuprofen, which is what I think I take, Advil ibuprofen. The other thing, too, is, this is interesting, too, that Dr. Muranova talks about. If you take too many pain medications for your headaches, because you're trying to prepare for it, some people actually would take a couple Advil or something, Tylenol, before they work out or right after they work out because they're worried about the headache. That can lead to migraines. Isn't that terrible? So they tell you not to take it more than twice a week if you're getting, headaches from exercise-induced headaches. So that's a very specific category. Now, the other thing that's interesting too is I was reading in this article that headaches can actually last from anywhere from 3 hours to 7 days, which is brutal. I can't even imagine being laid up for 7 days. And even when they say when you get through the initial migraine headache, you might even have a few rebound headaches. So some people, it's interesting, have so many problems with this. So the Mayo Clinic recommends avoiding using certain medications like triptans, often used for migraines, and some ergots, which are less effective than triptans, but still sometimes are used for migraines, more than 15 days a month. That's quite a bit, actually. That's half the month. So you really should talk to your doctor before loading up on this stuff. Also, needing to rely on any kind of pain medication for more than 15 days is something you do need to bring up with your doctor. And I don't know how many of you take pain medications for stuff, but that's definitely a precursor for other more serious issues. It's like if you have, say, a musculoskeletal injury, even if it's minor, if you're not rehabbing it properly and you're always having to take pain medication, or you always have to go see your massage therapist every week because you're in pain, well, there's probably some type of issue there. Maybe not really an injury, or maybe a minor injury, or just a really bad fascia issue that you need to take care of. And simply blasting it in the gym may not be the best thing to do at that point. It's funny, we were watching the Billie Eilish, her documentary that I think it tracks about a year and a half or 2 years of her life, where she is on the pinnacle of really making it and then blows up and becomes a great, performing artist and wins all these Grammys. Yeah, as a 17-year-old, all the way to her 18th birthday. She would constantly jump around on stage. And she's not the best mover, let's be honest. Her talent is really in her singing. Yeah, she's hypermobile. She doesn't work out a lot. So
she used to be a dancer.
Yeah, she used to be a dancer. So she was probably in very good shape at one point. Obviously, dancers are on the elite level of fitness. But when you don't dance anymore and you don't do any real strength training, and then you jump off a speaker box and land on the ground, you're going to wreck yourself. I mean, I wouldn't do that without training for that, right? So,
but oftentimes that's what we come across is the people we work with, they all of a sudden have to do something in their home. They decide to take on some new home improvement project out of nowhere.
Yeah. And you want to be prepared for it, like anything you're doing. Mm-hmm. All right. So, any other thoughts you want to add on migraines?
No, I think we covered it. So, I mean, for me, a lot of the people I work with who have headaches, my first thing is always checking their alignment. I find even when I watch people in my classes, they always lead with their chin or their nose, and I could see why their necks are often strained, and a lot of them actually will tell you, well, they have shoulder issues. So it becomes multiple things. Is it going to be a shoulder issue, or is it going to be a neck issue. And then if it gets bad enough, then it becomes a migraine issue or a headache issue, whichever. I do have a handful of people where we are talking about that very, very top of the spine. So the Atlas C1, C2, there's going to be like too much mobility. And I mean, in fact, I used to work with a trainer who turned into a chiropractor who specifically works on just that little segment of the spine. And you know, for him, he thinks that takes care of everything. So once you fix that, it takes care of everything all the way down. So I think everybody kind of has their own specialty.
I think that's a good point, because I've often wondered, you know, why I get them. Why? I mean, obviously the migraine I got, the first migraine I ever experienced, I was already middle-aged. I was like 35. However, I would say I have always experienced headaches even as early as my early 20s. In fact, I could tell you to the day when I first experienced what I believe was fascia pain leading to headaches. I was 21 years old, and I was training as a bodybuilder at the time. And I remember I would just train like a maniac. I mean, I would train sometimes 2-3 times a day in shorter spurts, because I found that was the best for recovery and building muscle. And, you know, I'd go to bed, and especially on a Friday night, you know, I just pound myself like you can't believe, Monday through Friday. I'd go to sleep, you know, Saturday or Friday night, wake up kind of late Saturday morning because I'm my ass is kicked from the whole entire week of school and training, right? And then what do? I wake up and go to the gym that morning, right? I'd only have one day off from training back in those days. And I noticed a few times, the first time I went to the gym and I'm like, God, my neck is killing me. My head's killing me. And of course, I was still sleeping on my stomach at the time on a twin bed. That sure didn't help. And I found, you know, over time that I was experiencing a lot of neck pain. Now, I wish I could go visit that 21-year-old version of myself. And I would tell myself, you need to roll your neck out. Go get a lacrosse ball. Go get something that's going to help the fascia pain in your neck. And I think, you know, maybe some of these issues not only came from the intense training I was doing, but also, you know, it hadn't been that long since I'd retired from football. And you got to remember, when I was playing football, the helmet-to-helmet collisions were normal. It was legal. Now, spearing and lowering your head was completely illegal. You would be flagged for that. If you did that twice in a game, you'd be ejected. And the reason why they did that wasn't so much for concussions in those days. We didn't really view concussions as the biggest threat in those days playing football. It was the compression of the vertebrae. So it would be very common for a tackler to lower his head at the last second and have these huge impacts with the ball carrier. And anytime you have a huge impact with the head down and you compress the vertebrae, your risk of paralysis, you know, damaging not only the structure of the vertebrae, but the fluid in the vertebrae itself and the protection around the spinal cord would be impacted. Now, what you have to understand is you don't necessarily have to like sever the spinal cord or damage it physically in that way to create paralysis or severe symptoms. Just simply the swelling around the spinal cord can cause paralysis. And that's why nowadays, and we've learned this through years of research of football players and injuries, and not just football players, gymnasts, anybody that has high impact injuries, race car drivers, you know, you name it. If there's ever a spinal cord injury, and I remember this when I was playing, you wouldn't touch the guy. The trainers and the medical staff would come out with a board, and first they put on what they call I forgot the name of it. It's like a neck cage they put on you, so it completely stabilizes your head, and it kind of goes in, you know, and of course it doesn't screw into your head. It's just got some pads there, but it completely keeps your cervical spine totally neutral. And then they turn you on your side and they roll you onto a board, and they literally basically strap you to the board so nothing moves, everything stays stable. Why is that important? You don't want to do any further damage when you're transporting the player or patient. The other thing they would do is they would inject you with anti-inflammatories immediately when you got to the hospital. Now, just that alone would increase your chance of full recovery by 80%. It was crazy. And I remember there's been some football players over the years that had severely, debilitating neck injuries where they were quadriplegics for a period of several months. And then you see them a year later and they're walking again. And they're almost, I don't want to say fully recovered, but they move well enough and they're fairly strong. They obviously couldn't play the game again. Like there was a linebacker on Cleveland, I can't remember his name. I should have looked it up, I can't think of it. He lowered his head. It was just a weird injury where he kind of got hit on the side of the head and it caused paralysis. But fortunately, his spinal cord wasn't severely damaged. There was swelling around it, and because they reacted quickly and treated him quickly with anti-inflammatories injections to the spine, he actually got over it. And he's, I don't want to say fully recovered, meaning he could go play football again, but he can run, he can jump, he can go to the gym and work out. He's functional again. And we've learned a lot from it. So when I was playing in those days, alignment was, that's what you worried about most, was not lowering your head so you have impact on top of the head. Now, we figured this out since, and those spinal cord injuries are very rare. They were pretty common when I was playing. But now they want to avoid all head impacts together if you can, right? Because what that does is that prevents the secondary impact syndromes you get on your brain. So it isn't so much just the one big impact, it's the fact that your brain suffers trauma because it does float and it moves. And then if you get hit again, that can really cause damage. And then every successive hit after that, before you fully recovered, can cause permanent damage to your brain and lead to things like CTE, which is chronic traumatic encephalopathy. Whoa, I said it perfect. So, you always want to be very careful with impacts to your head and your neck. And I think migraines play an active role in this. And I think a lot of the soft tissue around my neck, I think some of the issues I've had, trigger points and things like that, might have come from football. Because, like I said, when I played, I never speared, but I would tackle a player in this area all the time. So the crown of my helmet would usually hit the face mask or the crown of the ball carrier's helmet, providing they were doing their job by keeping their head up. And they were just horrendous, like train wreck impacts, right? And I'm sure that has had some impact on me. And that's probably one of the many factors, I would guess.
Yeah. So on that note, there's also a lot of people who probably don't go through the concussion protocol even a couple years after incidents like that. Mm-hmm. So they've never really addressed those issues. And then the second thing is, like, the people I work with are a lot of people who've been in car accidents, and pretty major car accidents. So, like, what is the whiplash like? Because you can tell there's a change that's happening in the spine for those that I have who've had major accidents. So
yeah, it's pretty difficult. I mean, when you go through injuries like that, I remember AJ Tarpley, who was a really good Stanford football player. I won't say he was like an elite kind of player, but he was a guy that was a very athletic linebacker who could cover in space, tackle well. He was a tackling machine, but he was a little bit undersized. Nobody ever expected this guy to play in the NFL, and he did. And he proved all the doubters wrong. And he played for the Buffalo Bills, played for Rex Ryan, and he describes a sequence his rookie year, it was the 15th game of the season. He says he recalls making a tackle at the 10-yard line, massive impact. He said, I couldn't feel anything. And I've been through this before where I've tackled a guy and I think, geez, if this guy bounces up off the ground, I'm just going to die right here. And he did. And then somehow I get up. And if anybody ever ran up to me and went, yeah, like that to me, I would have just collapsed. I needed that 5 minutes to regenerate, right? So he talks about being so confused after that hit, he didn't even know which direction of the line of scrimmage he was supposed to be on, right? Now, you'd think he'd leave the field, but he didn't. Because a guy like A.J. Tarpley was not a draft pick. He was a free agent signing. You can't show any chinks in your armor if you're not a guy who was drafted in the top rounds because you're expendable. If you want to play, you got to perform and you got to stay healthy. And partly why he was playing is because a starter got hurt. That's how he was presented that opportunity. So he talks about the whole goal line sequence that happened. And, you know, for those of you that aren't really intrinsically familiar with football, there are certain positions on the field where, on defense, where you call out signals. So generally speaking, the free safety, which is the back end of the defense, that's the guy that reads the formation and what he thinks the coverages should be and communicates with the corners and the other safety. Now, there's a linebacker in the middle called the Mike linebacker. And the Mike linebacker is always the one who calls out everything with the offensive line, how you're going to stunt blitz, meaning, you know, not trying to get complicated here, but sometimes they take a defensive lineman who's over here and they move him back this way when the ball's snapped because you want to double team the guard or lineman on this side so you could smash through and get to the quarterback. He says, literally, I don't even know what I was calling. I'm screaming out signals. I don't know what I was saying. All I did was, I had no idea what my responsibility was. I just looked for someone to hit him and I went and hit him. And he made a big play on the goal line and they stopped him on 4th down. And he says he couldn't play for the last game of the season because he literally had headaches. He couldn't reason. They knew that he had hurt himself, right? So in the off season, he disclosed to his girlfriend that he had had 3 of those concussions. I think 1 at Stanford and 2 for the Buffalo Bills. So 1 occurred in camp and he never told anyone. And then when the second one happened at the 15th game of the season, he had to tell somebody because his brain wasn't working right. And he made the very difficult choice in the off season to retire. And he says the hardest thing he ever did was go to Rex Ryan, the head coach in the off season, and tell him in tears, I can't play. I have to retire. You know, and no one loved that game more than him. You know, you could just tell. He's very passionate. And, you know, it was just interesting because he talked about how his mentality was quite a bit different than other players' mentalities because he was from Minnesota, the state of Minnesota. He was talked about how, you know, he came from a middle-class family. It wasn't a really desperate family type situation for him. So he talked about how, you know, he had the Stanford degree and everything, and he really wanted to view the pros and cons of whether he should play or whether he should not play. So he really only had this conversation, I believe, with his significant other. He never told his parents, never told his friends, because he didn't want anybody to feel like they had an impact on his decision. And he talked about something really interesting called the burn the ships mentality, burning ships. So he talked about how when a lot of Europeans explored North America as an incentive to stay and try to make a life here, they burned the ships because they weren't going to go back. And he says that's the mentality a lot of players have that come in the NFL because they're willing to risk their health, everything long term to succeed and to be a star, essentially. And it's different for everyone else. Obviously, everyone has a dream. But for others, there's more serious financial implications in all this. Maybe a lot of the players, the whole family's depending on him to rescue the whole family out of poverty. So there isn't really a big choice for them to play or not, because that's the only profession they're going to be able to do where they're going to make anywhere from $500,000 to $1 million a year, in some cases much more than that, to play football. Because once the game's over for a lot of players, they aren't going to have as high a paying job. And that's one of the great things about graduating from Stanford is you intern at Google and Facebook, and you have a chance to work for a software company, or not just a software company, a financial company, whatever it is. Mm-hmm. There's good nonprofits that they just have a lot of contacts. Mm-hmm. And you have a future. You know you have a future, so it impacts your decision making in terms of your health. Now, also, there was a player on the 49ers named Chris Borland who played at Wisconsin. Mm-hmm. And He was another great linebacker, had a great rookie year, and he retired suddenly. And everyone wondered, why is he retiring? Well, it turns out the guy had 3 concussions in one season. Like AJ, it happened in camp, then it happened again mid-season, and he didn't really tell a lot of people because he wanted to play. And then he realized at the end of the season, what am I doing to myself? I love this game, but it's not the only thing I love in life. And he retired. In fact, he's in some ways, I'm not going to say he's an advocate, like an anti-football, advocate. He just thinks there's a little too much marketing towards it. Like people should make their own decisions, irregardless of all the marketing, to play. And it is a weird time we're living in with football because less and less kids are playing football in high school, and yet interest seems to be generating higher and higher every year. So at some point there's going to be a conundrum in football. So yeah, we ended up with football even though we were talking about migraines, but they relate. Anything else you want to add?
Nope.
All right, so hopefully we covered some of these symptoms that maybe you weren't aware of. And like we said, exercise-induced migraines doesn't mean you shouldn't work out. It just means you have to figure out what the trigger is. And in many cases, it's very intense exercise in, harsh environments, high altitude, heat, things like that. I would imagine extreme cold would be tough too. I know sometimes I think I've gotten headaches in very cold weather. So it's interesting. So yeah, a lot of times I remember talking to doctors about this. Some people believe caffeine can be a trigger. Chocolate can be. I think all of us have different triggers, and you have to find out what it is. All right. If you have any comments or anything you'd like to say, any suggestions, please do so in the comments section. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we hope you have a great rest of your day.